I never thought I'd say this, but at 70, I find myself deliberately avoiding friends and people. Some might call it isolation, but I see it as clarity. Life has taught me many lessons, and one of the most valuable is understanding where to invest my energy. Let me explain why solitude has become my greatest ally. Time is the one thing we can never get back. When we're young, we feel like we have an unlimited supply of it. We waste hours, days, even years on things that, in hindsight, never really mattered. But when you reach 70, time takes on a different meaning. Every moment becomes more valuable because you realize just how little of it you actually have left. This shift in perspective changes everything. It forces you to prioritize, to question what truly deserves your attention, and most importantly, to let go of anything that doesn't add value to your life. In my younger years, I felt obligated to say yes to every invitation, every favor, every conversation. I was always surrounded by people, thinking that a packed schedule meant I was living a full life. But looking back, I see how much time I gave away to meaningless interactions, small talk that led nowhere, friendships that were based on convenience rather than connection, and gatherings where I felt more like a spectator than a participant. I thought I was building relationships, but in reality, I was just filling time. Now, I see time as currency, and I spend it carefully. I no longer force myself to be around people out of obligation. I don't engage in conversations that feel forced or draining. I don't chase after friendships that have run their course. Instead, I invest my time in things that bring me real joy, reading books that make me think, walking in nature without feeling rushed, sitting in silence and simply appreciating the moment. I have stopped trying to fit my life into a mold that no longer suits me. I have realized that solitude is not loneliness, it's freedom. Part of this transformation also comes from understanding that not all friendships are equal. When we're younger, we collect friends like trophies. The more we have, the better we feel about ourselves. We think quantity equals quality, but that couldn't be further from the truth. As I've aged, I've learned that most friendships fall into one of three categories: those that grow with you, those that stay stagnant, and those that drain you. The friendships that grow with you are rare and precious. These are the people who understand your journey, who support you without judgment, and who bring you peace rather than stress. They don't demand constant attention, yet when you meet, it feels like no time has passed. These friendships are worth nurturing, worth making an effort for, because they add something meaningful to your life. Then there are friendships that stay stagnant. These are the ones built on nostalgia rather than real connection. You stay in touch because of shared history, but when you sit down to talk, you realize you have nothing in common anymore. The conversations feel repetitive, stuck in the past, as if time has frozen while you have moved forward. Holding on to these friendships can sometimes feel like wearing an old, uncomfortable coat, familiar but no longer a good fit. And then there are the draining friendships. The ones that take more than they give. The ones filled with drama, negativity, or constant complaints. These friendships require effort, but not in a rewarding way. They leave you feeling exhausted rather than uplifted. I used to tolerate these relationships because I didn't want to seem rude or selfish. But with age comes wisdom, and I've realized that protecting my peace is more important than maintaining friendships that only bring stress. Letting go of certain people isn't an act of cruelty, it's an act of self-care. It doesn't mean I don't care about them, it means I care about myself too. I refuse to spend the time I have left on earth feeling drained, frustrated, or obligated. I choose to surround myself with people who bring me joy, or sometimes, to simply enjoy my own company. Because at the end of the day, life is too short to spend it with the wrong people. Negativity is a thief. It sneaks into your life disguised as concern, disguised as friendship, disguised as things you once thought were important. When you're younger, you don't always notice it. You put up with gossip, with drama, with people who drain your energy because you think that's just how life is. But when you reach a certain age, when you've lived through enough, seen enough, lost enough, you realize how heavy that weight has been. You realize how much of your life has been spent absorbing other people's problems, other people's insecurities, other people's chaos. And one day, you simply decide, no more. I spent years thinking it was my responsibility to be there for everyone. To listen to every complaint, to mediate every argument, to offer advice even when I wasn't asked. I thought that made me a good friend, a good person. But what I didn't realize was how much of myself I was giving away in the process. Every negative conversation left me a little more exhausted. Every toxic interaction stole a little more of my peace. And for what? Most of the time, the same people who came to me with their problems weren't looking for solutions, they were looking for validation, for someone to feed their endless cycle of negativity. So I made a choice. I stopped engaging in conversations that revolved around complaining. I stopped entertaining drama that had nothing to do with me. I stopped trying to fix people who didn't want to be fixed. And the moment I did, something incredible happened. I felt lighter. My mind felt clearer. My days felt more peaceful. It was as if I had been carrying a weight I didn't even know was there, and suddenly, I could breathe again. I've learned that protecting my peace isn't selfish, it's necessary. There is nothing noble about allowing yourself to be consumed by negativity. There is nothing brave about staying in toxic situations just because you don't want to seem rude or distant. If someone only brings stress into my life, I let them go. If a conversation only leaves me feeling frustrated or drained, I walk away. I refuse to spend the years I have left being an emotional sponge for other people's chaos. And in that space, in that newfound quiet, I have discovered something even more valuable: self-reflection. For the first time in my life, I have given myself permission to sit in silence without feeling guilty. To be alone without feeling lonely. To listen to my own thoughts instead of being bombarded by everyone else's. And I've realized that in the absence of noise, in the absence of constant social distractions, I can finally hear myself think. There's a kind of wisdom that only comes from solitude. When you step away from the noise of the world, you start to see things more clearly. You start to understand yourself in ways you never did before. You recognize what truly makes you happy, not what society tells you should make you happy. You begin to appreciate the simple things: a quiet morning, a good book, a walk with no destination. You stop feeling the need to impress people. You stop craving validation from outside sources. You realize that your worth isn't determined by how many friends you have, how many events you attend, or how busy your life appears to be. I used to believe that being alone was something to be avoided. That it was a sign of loneliness, of failure, of a life not fully lived. But now, I see it differently. Solitude is not emptiness, it is space. Space to think, to breathe, to be. It is freedom from expectations, from obligations, from the exhausting effort of constantly keeping up with other people's lives. I no longer feel the need to fill my days with noise just to avoid silence. Because in that silence, I have found something I never expected: peace. And that, more than anything, is worth protecting. There comes a point in life when you realize that your energy is not unlimited. When you're young, you push your body without a second thought, staying up late, working long hours, running from one social event to the next. You never stop to think about the toll it takes because you believe you'll always bounce back. But as you age, your body reminds you that it has limits. Your mind reminds you that constant stimulation is exhausting. Your heart reminds you that not everything deserves your attention. And suddenly, you start to make choices not just about how you spend your time, but about how you protect your energy. I used to think saying yes to everything was a sign of strength. I believed that being constantly available to others made me a good person. But I have learned that giving too much of yourself to the wrong things, to the wrong people, leaves you depleted. It's not just about physical energy, though that certainly changes with age. It's about mental and emotional energy too. The more you give to things that don't fulfill you, the less you have left for what truly matters. There was a time when I forced myself into social situations out of obligation. I attended events I didn't enjoy, entertained conversations I had no interest in, and maintained relationships that felt like more effort than joy. I told myself that's just what people do, that maintaining connections was important. But I started noticing something. Every time I walked away from these interactions, I felt drained instead of uplifted. Instead of feeling enriched, I felt exhausted. And that was my wake-up call. I no longer force myself into situations that take more from me than they give. If a gathering doesn't excite me, I don't go. If a conversation feels forced, I don't engage. If a friendship requires more maintenance than it's worth, I let it fade. It's not about isolation, it's about prioritizing. I choose to invest my energy in things that nourish me, whether that's a quiet morning with a cup of coffee, a walk in the fresh air, or a deep conversation with someone who truly understands me. I no longer spread myself thin trying to be everywhere, for everyone, all the time. Because the truth is, I don't have the energy for that anymore. And even if I did, I wouldn't want to spend it that way. This shift in perspective has also changed the way I see relationships. When we're younger, we believe that friendships are measured by how often we see each other, how frequently we call, how much we show up. We mistake presence for depth, thinking that the more time we spend together, the stronger the bond must be. But I have come to understand something far more important. True connections don't need constant validation. They don't require endless texts or daily check-ins to prove their worth. Some of the most meaningful relationships I have now are with people I don't see often. Months may pass, even years, but when we do connect, it feels like no time has gone by at all. There's no guilt, no pressure, no expectation. Just a quiet understanding that the bond is there, whether we speak every week or once a year. These are the relationships worth keeping, the ones that don't demand, don't drain, don't make you feel obligated. I used to think that letting go of friendships meant failure, that distancing myself from people meant I was withdrawing from life. But now I see it differently. I am not cutting people out, I am simply making room for what truly matters. I am choosing depth over quantity, peace over obligation, and quality over constant presence. The people who belong in my life don't need me to prove my loyalty with endless time and energy. They understand that real connections withstand distance, withstand silence, withstand the natural ebb and flow of life. So I no longer measure my relationships by how often I interact with someone. I measure them by how I feel when I do. If a conversation leaves me feeling lighter, if an interaction brings me joy, if a person respects my space and time, then that is a relationship worth keeping. If not, I let it go. Not out of resentment, not out of bitterness, but simply because I have learned that my energy is precious, my peace is valuable, and my time is not infinite.